everybody, welcome again. I'm Bridget.
And I'm Carla with Hardwood Lumber and Millwork, and today we're talking about Cypress.
We brought in a special guest. This is Kyle. He's a sawyer and he is with Custom Sawmilling Services. So Kyle, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. I would, first of all, my name's Kyle Carlton, and my buddy and I own a sawmill. We own a wood miser sawmill, and we custom saw lumber. And it started out as a hobby, and now it's a hobby that's gotten out of control, and we do it vigorously.
Tell us about your day job.
All right. Now I'm also an ag teacher. I've been teaching ag for quite a few years, and I'm at George Jenkins High School and teach forestry and horticulture, among other things. And that's how I actually got interested in the sawmill stuff and into forestry in general. Was I had an FFA team and they compete in forestry contests. And the first year, I learned more from them than they learned from me, and then I needed to step up my game, and I started learning a bit. And every summer, except for this summer, Florida FFA and the Forest Service of Florida get together and they have a forestry camp, and that's where I've learned quite a bit about forestry, is from the foresters and the rangers that put on the camp.
So this guy knows a lot about woods, and especially about cypress, so that's why we're here today. So tell us what you brought.
All right, I brought a stump from cypress tree. This was from a bald cypress tree, and then brought a little piece of pecky cypress up front, and that's caused by a fungus. And then we picked a little limb off of a cypress tree out back to show that it's a conifer, and its leaves lie flat in your hand like a feather. There's another cypress tree that the woods, you really can't tell the difference between bald cypress and pond cypress. And the only real difference I can see in the leaves is the leaves are twirled a little bit on your pond cypress rather than flat like a feather.
But both of those are actually harvested and marketed just as cypress.
Right, they're both sold as cypress, a lot of times as bald cypress, as the wood's indistinguishable. Generally, the bald cypress grow along flowing waters like rivers and streams, and they typically grow taller than your pond cypress. Your pond cypress grow in domes, low areas, ponds, and so forth.
But that's a good segue. So we talk about cypress. This is actually a cabinet door made out of cypress. We have a builder here in town who we make the cabinet doors for, and for outdoor kitchens, and then he paints them to ensure longevity. But cypress actually has a hardness rating, Jenka rating of about 510. It's got a very mild grain, a very pretty golden color. It doesn't have a lot of texture to it, like a pine or an ash, but it's got a really pretty, interesting grain. You can see right in here. So it's actually a really cool wood.
It's typically used, like you said, in that exterior kitchen. It's typically used in sort of an exterior construction. We also do see it in, again, like those cabinet doors. It's definitely not recommended for like a kitchen countertop because of that Jenka rating. Also, don't use that for like a cutting board. It's not going to do you any favors in that sense, because it is such a soft material.
Tell us how, when you have the two species of wood, I know historically cypress, people will come in and they'll want cypress. Oh, I'm doing siding, or I'm doing outdoor furniture. I want to make it out of cypress. But I have to tell them that today's cypress will not hold up as well as the old growth cypress that they're thinking of. So kind of tell us about the harvesting of historically how that was done, and why today's cypress just doesn't hold up compared to historic cypress, the old growth material.
Right. The cypress, as it ages, it produces a chemical, if you will, called cypressine, and it acts as a natural preservative to the wood. But it takes a long time for the tree to start making this. And I'm guessing the older it gets, the more it makes. So, when your trees are 500, 600, 700 years old, it's got the heartwood with a lot of the cypressine in it. Your newer growth trees just don't have that. And then the harvesting, typically it began along rivers and streams because they would use the water to float the logs to the mill. And in a lot of places, they would go out and send a crew a year before and girdle the tree. They would cut a ring all the way around the tree with an axe or saw, and what that would do would cut off in this cambium and phloem layer beneath the bark, and it would kill the tree.
So basically, like, it's starving, the leaves and everything.
Right, and the tree would dry out, and then it would start to dry out. I mean, you're not going to dry a 500-year-old tree, but it would dry it enough to where it would actually float, because it's hard to imagine things being more than 100%, but the moisture content on living cypress trees is over 100. I mean, they'll sink.
Oh, wow.
So
It's really
There you go.
fascinating.
So a green cypress tree will actually sink. So then so they got them, they girdled them, got them dried to a certain point, and that's how they moved them to the river for transport?
they would cut them. What they would do a lot of times, like if you ever watch timber sports or whatever, these trees are buttressed. They have a lot of your trees that grow in the water are.
Okay.
They go down like this and get wide at the bottom. And so what they would do, they would, because they were using hand tools, crosscut saws to cut these things, they would go up and they would cut some notches to put their springboards in, and the sawyers would stand, or the guys felling the trees would stand on these springboards and they'd cut their notch and then do the back cut with a crosscut saw, and sometimes they would even stand in these little boats called pierrots and cut the trees instead of standing on a springboard.
That sounds stable, trying to saw while you're in a boat.
I kind of feel like the boat would be a better bet, because if you fall, you go into the water. If you fall off the big,
Yeah, off the springboard. That's okay.
You land on a cypress knee and impaled with a cypress knee.
Oh, that's a pretty picture.
ouch, ouch, ouch.
So tell us, they're floating these trees down the river. So tell us how we ended up with sinker cypress.
Well, the sinker cypress, some of them they cut and they did not dry out enough to float, and they'll sink, or they have them tied up in a log deck, floating log deck with
Okay.
others, and some will get away, they get loose or they become waterlogged and go to the bottom, and those are the ones that are harvested now as sinker cypress, and they have a lot of the unique coloration and mineral stains and
I
things
actually,
like that.
it was cool. I actually read that with sinker cypress, if the bottom where it's in the river, if the bottom is sandy, you'll get a lot of golds and reds in your wood as it ages. It'll absorb minerals and it'll enhance the golds and reds in it. But if the river is a dark, murky, muddy bottom, a dark color, the wood will take on more of an olive green color. So those are real key factors when you're looking at sinker cypress. So what would you recommend folks, it's a beautiful wood. I've seen it take stain really well. What would you recommend people should use cypress for?
Well, a lot of times people use it for decorative stuff. To me, it's absolutely beautiful wood. I love it for paneling and siding inside a house. Historically in Florida, they used it because it was available. They used it for even flooring, which now you would consider it too soft for flooring.
That's true. I
But
wouldn't have guessed
furniture and things like that. I mean, if you look at old houses, a lot of times they would side them in cypress outside and so forth. So
we see a lot of that siding still come in where people are trying to match up to it.
Yeah.
So, and it's here in Central Florida. So, okay, is there anything else you want to add to that?
I guess that's about it.
You're
I mean,
good?
cypress is awesome though. I mean, it's one of my favorite woods to saw, one of my favorite woods to work with, and unfortunately it takes a long time for it to grow, and we want to make sure that when we do harvest it, it is sustainably harvested.
Yes,
That's awesome.
absolutely,
We appreciate
absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you, Kyle,
Right,
so
thank
much
you.
for coming to visit us again. Kyle with Custom Sawmilling Services as our guest today. We hope that you guys enjoyed this video about the cypress, especially since it is one of Florida's native trees. We look forward to seeing you guys again, and remember, whatever you build, keep it sustainable. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.
bye.